Jambo, everyone. Today we have our fourth Friday storytelling. Detroit Association of Black Storytellers welcomes you to our storytelling evening performances. We got some stories to tell you today. So sit back and listen because our first storyteller is Gwen. Now, Gwen is a professional 10-year interactive storyteller. She is sometimes called Miss Gwen, or affectionately known as Gwen. She does reenactments of Coretta Scott King and Rosa Parks. Gwen, sometimes they call her Gwen Du Lum, is occasionally called for her dramatic interpretation of Maya Angelou and Still I Rise. She does storytelling for Detroit Association of Black Storytellers and also the Story League. So, one of the things that she always says, Gwen enjoys interactive rays of kindness. So, in her stories, as she shares them with youth, seniors, and organizations, her famous quote is, "I truly believe kindness still exists." All right, Gwen, tell your story.
Reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place if you can. Reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place if you can. I do believe there is kindness in this world. You may kind of doubt that when you look at the news, but I still believe. Well, there were some philosophers like Martin Luther King Jr., who professed love and togetherness. Jesus Christ said, "Do unto others as you wish for them to do to you." However, there are philosophies about kindness. I narrowed it down to three. First, there are people who just share kindness all the time. They're there to help others, be there for others. I kind of figure is in their deed of kindness. There are those people who just do things because they benefit from it. And they may not do it if someone would not be kind to them. Now, the third act of kindness, or not kindness, is the one who, because of their environment, have never, ever experienced kindness. They would know if someone was giving them kindness, they would know how to receive it, and of course, they wouldn't be able to give it away. And that's where our story starts. The name of the story is The Crocodile and the Boy Named Good. Now, in this African tale, Crocodile was seated on the shore of the river, looking into the middle of the river, trying to decide how to get there because his leg was hurting. Along came Good. He had a conversation with Crocodile and found out that Crocodile's leg was ailing him. So he went back into the jungle, got a long vine, and made a pallet with leaves and mushed them together, convenient for the crocodile. He placed this on his right shoulder, and then he pulled this heavy crocodile onto his shoulder and steadily supporting him, walking into the water, not just to the shores, but into the middle of the river. Now, Good lowered him and was about to leave when he felt a pain on his arm. He looked around and he noticed that Crocodile's mouth was all over his arm. Good said, "Why are you doing this? I was just kind to you, and now I'm getting bad." Crocodile said, "All you did was pick me up from the shores of the river and taken me into the middle of the river. But what I really know is that I'm hungry and I'm ready for lunch." Now they talked back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And to solve this problem, they were going to ask 3 animals. If you do good, bad may come to you. Well, the first animal was a cow. The cow said, "Of course, bad comes to you. I was good to my master and his family. I gave milk to them most of my life. Now they won't even take me into the pasture as I've gotten old." Yes, bad comes to you when you do good or not kind. The second animal was a horse. The horse also said, "You know what? Bad comes to you when you do good. Oh, I allowed my master to receive trophies of all these contests, and they won't let me out into the pasture, or they won't comb my mane." Yes, bad comes to you when you are kind. Well, Good was getting a little nervous now. The third was a rabbit. He heard the question, but now he wanted to hear the whole story. Good told the story of how he went into the jungle and made a mat and patted and put it on his shoulder, and how he took the crocodile into the water. And Crocodile once again said, "All he did was took me from the shores of the river into the middle of the river. Why are we making such a big deal about this?" Rabbit thought, and he asked them to come closer and closer and closer. Rabbit told the boy Good, "Go back to your village, the village of kindness that you're most familiar with. People do good and kind all the time. They wouldn't think anything of it if you don't reciprocate to them. That's just how they are. And this is what you know. Because you see, Crocodile is from a place that he never had kindness done to him. He doesn't know how to receive it, and he will not know how to give it." Now, with that being my story, I have experienced people who were kind and good to me. Now, a long time ago, when I was in college, they always have you to work as teams and give presentations, and after that, serve them. Well, my team was ready. This upcoming week, we were supposed to give our presentation. So Monday, I went to the grocery store, the deli section, and ordered a deli tray. The day of the presentation was Wednesday. It was supposed to be ready. Now, this is when my dilemma or good fortune began. Wednesday morning, I had a transaction of money from my wallet. I placed the wallet in the drawer of my desk. Well, I knew I had to rush at the end of the day to pick up that deli tray. At the end of the day, when I picked up my purse, I heard a sound coming from the ceiling. Then the principal said, "There's a meeting today after work." How was I going to make it there in time? So with my purse, I sat at the meeting on the edge of my chair. When it was over, I ran down the hall as quickly as I could. Oh, you could have thought that I was Flojo, sprinting through the halls. When I got to the parking lot, I got in that behind the wheel, put my fingers in the steering wheel and turned it and zoomed out the parking lot. I got to the grocery store in time. I was in line at the deli, and all of a sudden I thought, let me get my purse out, ready to pay the lady. And I remembered my purse was on my arm, but the wallet was in the drawer of my desk. I looked at the time. I didn't have time to go back to my job, come here, pay for the deli tray, and go to the college. Well, humbly, I went to the receptionist at the deli, shared my dilemma, and she said, "Pay it tomorrow." I got the tray, turned around, relieved, and rushed to the presentation. Well, of course, my teammate was giving her presentation. I decorated the table with the deli tray, the napkins, spoons, and forks and cups that she brought. And later, I gave mine and received an A. You know what I did on the next day. The next day, when the school day was over, I reached for my purse, made sure that wallet was there, and sprinted out the door. You know, as Flojo would have done. I ran to my car in the parking lot, put my fingers on the steering wheel, and squeezed right out of that parking lot. I got to the grocery store looking for that nice lady and humbly talked with her. I am so glad that you understood and gave me that deli tray. And before I could continue, she smiled, nodded her head, and pointed to the cashier. "You could pay over there." I turned around. Tears were coming down my face. I still believe there's kindness. And with a drop of a hat, there will be people who would be just like the receptionist at the deli counter. From then on, I vowed to help others as much as I could. I worked with my peers as I was working within the school. When later, I worked with my staff. Now, don't forget the young people. I present a kindness to them that I would not have as much if all this kindness hadn't been brought to me. And from that moment on, with all of that, that is what I did, in which I will sing. Reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place if you can. Reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this a better place if you can. Reach out and touch. And that's the end of my story.
And kindness was in that story. I like the way Gwen always shares those songs in her stories. All right, Gwen, good job. As we go to our next storyteller, Cheryl. Now, Cheryl is known as Matty Oni. She's a seasoned storyteller who invites listeners into her story. She tells her stories that informs and educates. Cheryl has developed her storytelling voice by listening to her own family stories of relatives and their memories. You know how you have your family reunions and everybody sits around and talks? Well, that's where she has collected a lot of her stories. And she connects her story to also to historical events as she links them to her own life. She says that African Americans have a responsibility to share their stories to the next generation. Her greatest quote is, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you," by Maya Angelou. She's going to share her personal story and a story that she heard at church. Next, we have Cheryl Pryor, known as Matty Oni. All right, Cheryl, take it away.
My name is Cheryl Lynn Hart Pryor. My parents, Leroy and Vera Hart, are both from Louisiana, and I just barely made my debut here. As the story goes, my parents were visiting my grandparents in Cullen and Pleasant Grove, Louisiana, and my mother was near term. Of course, my grandparents wanted my parents to stay, but my father was determined to have his child in the house that he had purchased in Detroit. So off we went, by car, no less. Well, I was born 6 weeks after their return to Detroit. I also have a sister, Karen, and a close friend, Eugene, whom I call my brother. My new love is storytelling. Storytelling can be used to teach English, history, math, morals, character building, and to tell your own personal experiences. I started telling stories to my daughter, like so many of us did. And later, while teaching at-risk students, at-risk high school students, I decided to incorporate storytelling into the academics to help my students learn history. And much to my surprise, I found that my students really enjoyed my stories and they learned history. And voila, I got a new learning strategy. Well, later I began to integrate storytelling into my training. And I found this statistic. It says after a presentation, 63% of attendees remember the stories, and only 5% remember the statistics. I love storytelling, and I'm on my way to becoming a master storyteller. I want to make history come alive, which is the role of a master storyteller. Now, I have a personal experience I'd like to share with you, and it's entitled My Birthday Celebration, The Big Bang. Well, I started my day thanking God for allowing me to see another day and asking God to continue to bless my friends and family. Also, I asked God to help me be a better me. I did my hour of exercise. Got to keep that regimen and be ready physically, mentally, and spiritually. Then I went to Chateau Pleasant Grove in Louisiana to celebrate with my family. I received the best possible service. I had keto-style pancakes with cane syrup, turkey bacon and eggs with onions and green peppers and cheese, and of course, big, fluffy biscuits, which was fabulous. I had my favorite coffee with a little Remy Martin. Oh, yeah. A fantastic time was held by all, and I left a hefty tip. Next, back in Detroit, where I received a shaker filled with cosmopolitan martinis from friends that I drank as I descended to La Washateria, where everything is clean and fresh. I saw and heard from family members and friends. It was incredible. Throughout the day, I was treated with appetizers, stuffed mushrooms, crab and cheddar baked wonton purses, calamari, salmon on watercress with a hint of parsley, an exotic fruit bowl with pineapple, kiwi, apples, persimmons, which I love, pistachios, pine nuts, and all sorts of things, and with a little light salad dressing. Am I making you hungry? Does anyone remember the cartoon Deputy Dog? Well, there was a character in that cartoon named Muskie Muskrat that loved persimmons. I think that's where I got my love for persimmons. Even though it's my birthday, I must continue to be health conscious. Now, later on that afternoon, my daughter called and she inquired about how I was spending my birthday. I told her that I was having a remarkable and extraordinary day. Of course, I had my martini, which added a little piquance to the afternoon. I continued to see and hear friends, and my superb surprise dinner was at the Salter House in El Dorado, Arkansas. Yes, I said El Dorado. That's where it is, which had a reputation for Creole cuisine. Now, just a little information, just a little FYI. Creole food uses tomatoes, and they make their roux with butter and flour. And then they have the remoulade and spices and seafood. Now, and it's an African, Spanish, and a little bit of French cuisine. Now, Cajun, on the other hand, it makes its roux with oil and flour, no remoulade, sassafras, and pork, and it's a little spicier, a little heavier on the cayenne pepper side, and with more of a French influence. My before dinner drink was, of course, my martini. I was treated to baked stuffed red fish with onions, celery, bell peppers, and capers, and a taste of garlic in a creamy sauce. Wild rice mixed with couscous, fresh roasted baked beets, and bread, which I did not eat. Got to watch those calories somewhere. Then for dessert, the chef brought out homemade carrot cake with French vanilla ice cream. Non-dairy, of course. My day was great. It was a fantastic way to celebrate my birthday. Oh yeah. Thank you, God, for letting me see another year. And thanks to family and friends for making me feel essential. I'm getting a little tired. I've had a really busy, full day. But I want to pass along a secret. To be a master storyteller, you must have a great imagination. And this is my birthday during COVID-19. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, this wonderful Sunday morning. This is the Right Reverend Maddie Owning, and I have a sermon to give you today. Now, can I get a little joyful praise here? Amen. And we're in God's temple, and I want to tell you a story, but it's not really a story. It's not in the Bible, but it is blessed and a much needed story that everyone should hear. Children, I heard you say that Black people don't do anything but have 300 uses for the peanut. That's not true. And I'm here to tell you that that is a lie. Sunday school teachers, I want you to incorporate this lesson into your Bible lesson. My sermon today is, where would we be if there were no Black people? Can I get an amen? Amen. And this story is about a young boy who's just about the age of some of you children out there. And let me tell you that I have to give credit to Reverend Dr. Carlisle Stewart III. It is his sermon, but I think it's important that we share this message. Now, there was a little boy named Uchichi who woke up one morning and asked God, what if there were no Black people in the world? Well, God thought about that for a moment and then said, son, follow me around today, and let's just see what it would be like if there were no Black people in the world. Now get dressed and we'll get started. Uchichi ran to his room to put on his clothes and shoes, but there were no shoes, and his clothes were all wrinkled. He looked for the iron, but when he reached for the ironing board, it wasn't there. You see, Sarah Boone, a Black woman, invented the ironing board, and Jan E. Matzlinger, a Black man, invented the shoe lasting machine. Oh, well, God said, and go and do your hair. Uchichi ran again to his room, and he was going to comb his hair, but the comb was not there. You see, Walter Simons, a Black man, invented the comb. Well, Uchichi decided to go brush his hair, but there was no brush. You see, Lydia O. Newman, a Black female, invented the brush. Well, you know, Uchichi was a sight. No shoes, wrinkled clothes, hair was a mess because he did not have the hair care products of Madam C.J. Walker. Well, you know, you get the picture. Some of you children sometimes running around here looking like that. You know you need to take care of your hair, comb your hair, and iron your clothes. Well, God told Uchichi, well, let's do the chores around the house and take a trip to the grocery store. Uchichi's job was to sweep the floor. Now, some of you jobs done. You don't have to wait for anyone to tell you what to do. And Uchichi just started sweeping and sweeping. It wasn't there. You see, Lloyd P. Ray, a Black man, invented the dustpan. So he swept his pile of dirt over in the corner and left it there. Now, children today, don't you leave that dirt out there. Don't you leave that dirt out there for your mothers and fathers to pick it up. Put it in the garbage can. Well, Uchichi then decided to go ahead and mop the floor. But when he went for the mop was gone. You see, Thomas W. Stewart, a Black man, invented the mop. Uchichi thought to himself, I'm not having any luck. Well, son, we should wash the clothes and prepare a list for the grocery store. Well, when Uchichi finished washing, Uchichi went to place the clothes in the clothes dryer. But it was not there. You see, Charles T. Samoan, a Black man, invented the clothes dryer. Now, Uchichi got a pencil and some paper to prepare to write the list for the market. But he noticed that the lead was broken. Well, he was going to sharpen it, but he was out of luck because John Love, a Black man, invented the pencil sharpener. He then reached for a pen, but it was not there because William Purvis, a Black man, invented the fountain pen. And I want you to know that Purvis pens today are very expensive and they're very great writing tools. Now, as a matter of fact, as time went on, Lee Burgess invented the typewriting machine and W.A. Leavitt invented the printing press. Both were Black men. So Uchichi and God decided just to go ahead and go to the market. Well, Uchichi opened the door and he noticed the grass was almost as tall as he was. Oh my gosh. You see, John Burr, a black man, invented the lawnmower. Then they made their way over to the car and found that it just wouldn't go. You see, Robert Spikes, a black man, invented the automatic gear shift, and Joseph Gamble, a black man, invented the supercharger system for internal combustion engines. They noticed that the few cars that were moving were running into each other, bam, and having wrecks because there were no traffic signals. You see, Garrett A. Morgan invented the traffic light. Well, it's getting late, so they walked to the market, got their groceries, and then returned home. And just when they were about to put the eggs and the butter and the milk, they noticed that the refrigerator was gone. You see, John Standard, a black man, invented the refrigerator. So they just put the food on the counter. By this time, they noticed it was getting mighty cold in the house. So Uchichi ran to turn the heat up, but there was no thermostat. And of course, there was also no furnace. Even in the summertime, they would have been out of luck because Frederick Jones, a black man, invented the air conditioner. And by the way, I forgot to tell you, but Alice Parker is the one who invented the furnace, a female, a black female. Well, it's almost time for Uchichi's father to arrive home. And his father usually took the bus, but there was no bus because the precursor to the bus was the electric trolley, invented again by another black man, Albert T. Robinson. Now, his father usually took the elevator from his office, which was on the 20th floor, but there was no elevator because Alexander Miles, a black man, invented the elevator. I know some of you out there listening to me would never be able to walk from the 20th floor down. Mama Mattione is telling you, Reverend Mattione is telling you to get in shape. Well, his father usually dropped off the mail at the nearby mailbox, but it was no longer there because Philip Downing, a black man, invented the letter drop box, and William Berry, a black man, invented the postmarking and canceling machine. Uchichi sat down at the table with his head in his hands. Oh. And when his father arrived, he said, "Why are you sitting in the dark?" "Why? Because we don't have any light. Because Lewis Latimer invented the filament that goes into the light bulb." Well, Uchichi learned what it would be like if there were no black people in the world. Not to mention, if you ever got sick and needed blood. Because you see, Charles Drew, a black scientist, found a way to preserve blood, and that led to the creation of the first blood bank. And what if a family member needed heart surgery? And this wouldn't have been possible either, because Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, a black doctor, performed the first open heart surgery. So if you ever wonder, like Uchichi, where would we be without black people? Well, it's pretty plain to see. We would still be in the dark. Thank you.
Shawnee Womack, so we always call her Shawnee, tells classic stories of songs and rhythms from her Jamaican immigrant grandparents that she grew up listening to. Shawnee is lively and entertaining and is guaranteed to leave you with a special feeling. She says that stories are therapeutic and have a healing value. Her passion is teaching others to tell their own stories. Through her workshops and performance opportunity, she helps many to find their own creativity. She loves sharing stories in various forms, singing and rapping and chatting and more with her audiences. Today, we're going to hear her sharing neo soul in her personal story. All right, take it away, Shani.
Hello, my name is Shani Womack, and I am so glad to be a part of the Fourth Friday storytelling concert. Have I got a story for you? This one is called the Patio Club, and I usually tell stories about Anansi and stories from my Jamaican side of my family, but this time I'm going to share one about my father's father, my grandfather. His name was Wally Brothers, and he later changed his name to Wallace because he thought that sounded more professional. But Wally is what everyone who knew him and loved him called him. He was born in Dulles Pine, Florida. He only had a 10th grade education, but he was smart, dare I say brilliant. He loved to read, and he was an excellent reader. My grandfather once told my dad, he said, if they put it in a book, I can do it. There's nothing that I can't learn to do as long as they write it down. So he grew up from an inquisitive young man to become a serious businessman. My father said he was a no-nonsense kind of guy. He loved to laugh, though, when he had time to hang out with his friends and his buddies. Although he grew up in a time of racial segregation and Jim Crow, he was never afraid of white people. And he never allowed them to intimidate him or to put a limit on what he dreamed he could accomplish. He actually befriended several white people, and as time went on, those friends would eventually help him to accomplish his big dreams. You see, my grandfather had high hopes. He had big dreams. He had a head for business, and he and my grandmother, Harriet, were two of the first people of color in the whole state of Florida to own several businesses. My grandfather started out, though, in the business of chitterlings. Chitlings is what we call it, right? Chitterlings. That's right, I said it. He was known as the Chitling Man. You see, he and his brother developed a way to can chitlins. Can you believe it? And they actually had quite a large demand for their product. You see, there were many who had migrated from the south to the north who had a taste for home cooking, and so especially in the city of Chicago, they loved this product. And it got to the point where business was booming and they were sending cases of chitlins to Chicago every week. My grandfather got it in his mind that he would move to Chicago and expand the operation. And he did. He moved to Chicago and he began to scope out a place where they could have a production facility and a warehouse to prepare and to stockpile these chitlins. But he wasn't there long before the mafia attempted to murder my grandfather. I wouldn't be here. You see, they wanted a cut of this chitlin money that he was bringing in. And when he refused, they tried to run him over with a car. So after that experience, my grandfather decided it was best to go back home to Florida. So once he got back home, he decided on another business venture, this time with his wife, my grandmother Harriet. They went into the candy business. My grandmother said that my grandfather Wally made the best candy she had ever tasted. And she said people came from miles and miles around just to purchase some of their homemade treats. Things like pralines and chocolate-covered peanuts and anything you could imagine they were whipping up in the kitchen. This was a great start and gave them seed money for their next business venture, which was a grocery store. They say that both black and white people would frequent this grocery store, and it became very popular in the local area. Over time, they saved up enough money to purchase a new location that was larger, where they put a second grocery store. And this location was large enough that they had room on either side to allow other businesses to rent the space. So there ended up being a black-owned beauty shop on one side and a clothing store on the other. And before long, they were bona fide, serious business people in the city of Cocoa, Florida. Now, my grandfather had one more business venture that he wanted to achieve. This would be his greatest accomplishment. And that's the story that I really want to tell you today. It's about the Patio Club. You see, my grandfather, through a friend of his who later became sheriff, was able to purchase 120 acres of land in the woods off of Friday Road in Cocoa, Florida. Well, he thought this was the perfect spot for his nightclub. He was going to build a nightclub from the ground up. But this wasn't going to be just any old juke joint in the woods. You see, his club, his Patio Club, had to be special. It had to be unique to draw the people in. And so he thought and thought about what he could do to make his nightclub different from all the rest. And he started reading. He started reading books. And before too long, it came to him, he would build a swimming pool in front of the nightclub with a beautiful patio area where people could sit out and relax in the evenings and enjoy themselves by the pool. So that was it. My grandfather read how to do it. He purchased the supplies. He called in his brothers, his friends to help him. They dug out the area. They framed it. They poured the cement. And before too long, they had a bona fide swimming pool, in-ground swimming pool in front of their nightclub. Now, no one had ever seen anything like this, so people came from miles around just to see the club. And then anybody who was anybody in that day, in terms of music, oh, they had to perform at the Patio Club. This was the mid-1950s, and anybody who had a name in the black music and rhythm and blues had to be there. People like Etta James and Wilson Pickett, Joe Tex, Gary Bond, and a young James Brown and the famous Flames. People like Ike and Tina Turner. My grandmother said they got out the car fighting. Who knew? But my grandparents had a favorite artist to perform at the Patio Club, and that was none other than Mr. B.B. King, the king of the blues. He performed there many times, and he brought his favorite guitar, his electric guitar, Lucille, with him for the performances. My father said he had a chance to meet him on different occasions, and over the years he became a close family friend. Well, with all that's going on in our world today, I began to think about the blues. B.B. King once said, "Life is the blues, or the blues is life." Blues is a way to tell stories about life. You can talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and all the experiences in between. The blues is really a truly African American art form. You see, it's taken from those Africans who were brought here as slaves. And it's from the music that they began to create that blues emerged. And that music that became the blues provided the foundation for gospel and rock and roll and jazz and country and even heavy metal. The blues is life. And so I've been feeling a little blue myself. You know, we all been living through a pandemic, and if you're like me, you've probably been traumatized by some of the things we've had to experience. We've had lots of losses and letdowns and maybe even disappointments. So I thought I might sing a little song for you today. Sing a little bit of the blues for you. And something about the blues just tends to make you feel better, lift your spirits. The blues is a music that is the people's music. Anybody can play the blues. Anybody can sing the blues. You don't have to have any special training or special musical abilities. People will play the spoons. People might blow jugs to play the blues. They might shake a tambourine. And you know what I thought about? I thought about a washboard. People would play the washboard as a part of creating some music to play the blues, to sing along with. And so today I've got a couple of thimbles with me, and I got this old washboard, and I'm going to try to play a little bit of the pandemic blues for you. All right? The COVID-19 pandemic blues. I got the blues, I got the blues. I got the COVID-19 pandemic blues. I got the blues, I got the blues. I got the COVID-19 pandemic blues. I cried so many tears, I almost drowned last year. Well, said I cried so many tears, I almost drowned last year. I got caught up in a storm of racism and COVID-19. They say a pandemic breaks out every 100 years. They say a pandemic breaks out every 100 years. But some folks never stop hating, steadily teaching fear. Well, I lost friends and loved ones, more than I dare to count. Oh, said I lost friends and loved ones, more than I dare to count. And it hurts to hear folks say COVID was only a hoax. Lord have mercy, I got the blues, I got the blues. I got the COVID-19 pandemic blues. I got the blues, I got the blues. I got the COVID-19 pandemic blues. I got the once every 100 years, cried so many tears, worldwide fears. I wish I could get out of here. I got the COVID-19 pandemic blues. Blues. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, I am Mary Johnson Grant, the Master of Ceremony today, ready to tell and share my story. But first, let me tell you a few things about myself. As an educator, I use stories to help me teach. I use stories as an administrator to help give ideas to teachers as to how they were to use their instructional model. And storytelling is a great experience because I have learned so much as a result of becoming a professional storyteller, helping people, working with people, because stories gives knowledge. And I always say that knowledge is power. So I use my stories to present power for people. And today's story, I know you have seen pigs fly in pictures, and you have seen horses fly too. Well, today's story is if people could fly. Oh yeah, they could fly. They could spread their wings. Well, you see, a long time ago in Africa, oh, the people were so happy. They were happy. They were singing their songs and playing around and enjoying life. And then some of them could fly. In this certain village, the people could fly. You would look up in the sky and you see them spreading their wings just like a blackbird in the sky. They would walk up to the sky and then they would fly. But you see, one day, a big ship came. ship took a net and threw it over the people and gathered them up and pulled them and put them into the bottom of the ship. Oh, they were very surprised. They saw all kinds of people speaking all kinds of languages in the bottom of that big ship, vessel, ship. And so they couldn't talk to each other, some of them. And the ones that could fly became so depressed because the boat went back and forth and back and forth. And they got sick from the motion of the water and the ocean. And they didn't know where they were going. They did not want to eat. They were not hungry. They just was frustrated. Where are we going and when are we going to get there? So all of a sudden they pulled up on the coast and everybody began to come off the ship. They moved off very, very fast. And the people were very mean with their mean voices. And they told them, go, get off the boat, get off the ship, get off this vessel, they called it. And that's what they did as fast as they could. And then they were led to these little houses and they really didn't know what was going on. And then all of a sudden the next day, they were told to go out in the sun and there was all this cotton and they had to pick cotton. And there was a master. He was in charge of everyone. And then there was an overseer. The overseer rode on a horse and he would look at the people to see who was doing their work and who wasn't. And he would holler out to the driver. Now the driver had a whip that would hit the people if they did not work fast enough. Oh, that sun was so bright that they had a hard time because they worked from sun up to sundown. Every day they worked. One day off on Sunday. Well, you see, there was one young lady named Isi Okusawa. Okusawa had a baby strapped on her back and she was chopping and she chopped and she chopped and she hoed and she pulled. She fed her baby, then she strapped her baby on her back by pulling it tight. The baby was okay at first, but then the baby got hot and the baby got tired and started to cry. Oh, that driver said, shut that baby up. But the baby kept on crying. He came over and hit. Oh, the baby cried louder. Oh, I cannot take it. As she fell to the ground. And as she fell to the ground, Isu came. Isu was a man who helped everybody. He kind of encouraged everybody. He came over to her and said, that's okay, baby. You'll be okay. And then she rested for a second and she began to get up. Okusawa was so tired, the baby began to cry again. Shut that baby up, the driver said, and she couldn't shut him up. He just kept crying and crying and crying until she fell down on the ground. And then she could not move. She became very depressed as she bowed her head. And then she remembered Esau came and whispered in her ear, Akula. Then she started to say, Akula. And then she grabbed her baby from her back, put her baby in her arms, and then she began to be lifted up in the sky. She was lifted up with her baby, Akula. And then all of a sudden, she was way up in the sky. Akula. And as she flew, she began to spread out her wings and the baby clung to her neck and she began to fly. The baby held on tight and they began to fly over the houses, over the trees, over the fences. Oh, she looked down and she said, oh, I'm free. As Esau looked up and everyone else looked up. And they said, oh, she can fly. Oh, she can fly. And the driver came, keep on working, keep on working. He would he would snap that whip, and they began to work. But that night when they got to the camp, they got in their wing circle and they began to sing about freedom. And they said, one day I'll fly away someday. Everybody was singing, I'll fly away. Oh, they just sang and they pinged and they clapped and they shook their tambourines and talking about Kusawa and how she had flown away. Well, the next day, I'm telling you, it was hot. It was so hot. And in the middle of the day, the sun was at the top of the sky. A boy was tired. Tubalongo says he got so tired. He fell to the ground. The heat was too much for him. He could not take it anymore. He said, And then Toby, or they called him Isu, came over to him. Because, he was like the father of everyone. Isu was. And then he told him in his ear, Akua. The boy could hardly hear him, but he didn't say anything. But he was from the village where they could fly. So he lifted his arms up, and before he knew it, Akua, he started to sing. And then the others, he looked down, and there were more who had fallen, and Isu had gone to them and whispered in their ears. And before you know it, they were lifted up into the sky. They began to fly. Some of them spread out their wings, and some just was lifted up because they was singing, Akua, Akua. And you could see the smile on their face. But then they looked back, and the other slave said, take us with you, take us with you. And they hollered back, you must remember what you have seen today. You must remember to have faith and believe that one day you will not be a slave anymore. You will be free. And you don't have to worry. Just keep the faith. And they said, we'll keep the faith. And they said, we're going to tell our children. And we're going to tell our children how the people could fly. And then they said, we will tell them how the people could fly from a certain village in Africa. And that's what they did. As they went back to their camps, they were singing, I'll fly away, because freedom will come someday. And that's what they believed in. And they did. They told their children, and their children told their children, and their children told their children, so the people could fly. And now I'm telling you to share this story of how if you keep faith in any situation, you can fly emotionally, physically. Just have the faith. I'll fly away someday. I'll fly away. And that's my story. The people could fly. Detroit Association of Black Storytellers for Friday storytelling. And look forward to seeing us every month for Friday. Detroit Association of Black Storytellers telling their stories. Asante Sana, which is African Swahili language, for thank you very much.
Thank you for attending tonight's program, the Detroit Association of Black Storytellers 4th Friday Story Hour. an evening of storytelling with DABS Spring Flowers. Please stay tuned following the broadcast for DABS Afterglow Mix and Mingle. Shortly, we will be showing you where the Afterglow takes place. If you missed any of tonight's performance, you can tune into DABS podcast for a replay of this broadcast on buzzsprouts.com. Or you can go to Detroit Association of Black Storytellers YouTube page where you saw the promo. All right, the DABS Fourth Friday Story Hour is the copyright of the Detroit Association of Black Storytellers and cannot be rebroadcast or re-recorded without the written permission and written consent of the Detroit Association of Black Stories Incorporated. If you live outside the Detroit area and interested in becoming a storyteller, please visit the National Association of Black Storytellers website or call 410-947-1117 or email them at questions@nabsinc.org. NABS will connect you with the Storytelling Association in a city near you. If you happen to live in the Detroit area and have interest in becoming a storyteller, please contact DABS at dabstorytellers@gmail.com. That's dabstorytellers@gmail.com or call 313-442-3227. Please join us next month for DABS Fourth Friday Story Hour. Friday, May 28th, barbecue, adult, and the men of DABS. Concert starts at 7 p.m., doors open at 6:55. Storytellers Larry Castleberry, Tone Ross, James Graham, hosted by Ivory Williams, will be taking you through tales through the night. On behalf of tonight's storytellers, Cheryl Pryor, Shauna Womack, Gwendolyn Lewis, with your host, Mary Grant, our musical director, Michelle McKinney, our production director, Jasmine Ross, along with the Detroit Association of Black Storytellers, we thank you for attending the DABS Fourth Friday Story Hour. See everyone Friday, May 28th, 7 p.m. for barbecue, adult beverage, and the men of DABS. Please be safe. By all means, wear a mask. Peace and blessings to you all. Until next time.